She asked him not to open the folded paper until she was gone. When Ethan finally read it, everything between them had already changed. Now start story. The night was unusually quiet. A soft breeze moved gently through the tall pine trees, carrying the scent of fresh rain and wild flowers across the peaceful valley. The moon hung low above the mountains, painting the calm lake with silver light. It was the kind of night that made every memory feel alive again. In a small wooden cabin beside that lake lived a young woman named Lina. She loved silence more than loud conversations. Every evening, just before sunset, she carried an old blanket and a small notebook to the end of the wooden pier. She would sit there for hours, watching the water ripple beneath the fading sky. Sometimes she wrote a few lines. Sometimes she simply smiled at the wind as if someone invisible was sitting beside her. The villagers often wondered why she spent so much time alone. Some believed she was waiting for someone. Others believed she had forgotten how to move on. Only Lina knew the truth. Many years ago, someone had entered her life as quietly as the evening breeze. His name was Ethan. He was not from the village. He came from a busy city where people hurried through every day without noticing the colors of the sky. After losing both of his parents within a short time, the endless noise of the city became too heavy for his heart. His grandfather had once owned the old cabin near the lake, so Ethan decided to stay there for a few months, hoping that silence could heal what words never could. On his first morning in the village, he woke before sunrise. Mist floated gently across the lake while birds welcomed the new day with soft songs. Everything felt different. For the first time in many months, Ethan breathed without feeling pain inside his chest. That evening he walked slowly along the narrow path beside the water. That was when he saw her. A young woman dressed in a light blue sweater sat alone at the end of the pier. Her long hair danced with the wind while she watched the sunset without moving. She looked peaceful. Not happy. Not sad. Simply peaceful. Ethan was about to turn around, afraid of disturbing her, but suddenly a page from her notebook slipped away with the wind. Without thinking, he ran after it. The paper floated across the wooden boards before landing near his feet. He picked it up carefully. There were only a few handwritten words. Some people leave your life quietly. But somehow they continue living inside every tomorrow. Ethan stood there for a moment, reading those words again and again. He slowly walked toward her and held out the page. "I think this belongs to you." Lina looked up. Their eyes met for the first time. She accepted the paper with a gentle smile. "Thank you." Her voice was soft enough to blend with the sound of the water. Ethan smiled back. "I hope I didn't read too much." She laughed quietly. "It is only a few words. Sometimes a few words carry an entire life." Neither of them spoke again. Instead they watched the last golden light disappear behind the mountains. The silence between them did not feel awkward. It felt strangely familiar. As darkness covered the valley, Ethan stood to leave. Before taking his first step, Lina spoke once more. "Will you come here again tomorrow evening?" Ethan looked at the quiet lake, then back at her gentle eyes. "Yes. I think I will." Neither of them knew that this simple promise would become the beginning of a love story that would quietly change both of their lives forever. The next evening arrived with the same gentle breeze that had carried Ethan to the lake the day before. He spent the entire afternoon trying to read a book inside the cabin, but every few minutes his eyes drifted toward the window. The quiet water outside seemed to be calling him. As the sun slowly began its descent, he followed the narrow path back to the wooden pier. Lina was already there. She sat with her notebook resting on her lap, watching the golden light spread across the lake. When she heard footsteps behind her, she turned and smiled, as though she had quietly expected him to come. "I wasn't sure you would keep your promise," she said. Ethan smiled. "Neither was I." For a moment they laughed softly, and the silence between them became easier than before. That evening they spoke about simple things. About the mountains that surrounded the village. About the birds that disappeared before every storm. About the old fisherman who greeted everyone with the same smile each morning. None of the conversations were extraordinary. Yet somehow every word felt meaningful. As the days passed, meeting at the pier became a quiet tradition. Every evening, just before sunset, Ethan would arrive carrying 2 cups of warm tea from the small cafe in the village. Without asking, 1 cup always belonged to Lina. Without thanking him, she always accepted it with the same gentle smile. Some friendships never begin with grand moments. They grow slowly, like trees whose roots spread deep beneath the earth before anyone notices their height. One evening Ethan asked, "Why do you always carry that notebook?" Lina looked down at its worn leather cover. "Because memories disappear. Words don't." She opened one page. The handwriting was neat and delicate. "Sometimes I write about the sky. Sometimes about strangers. Sometimes about people who never knew they changed someone's life." Ethan looked at her curiously. "Has someone changed yours?" Lina remained quiet for a long time. The wind moved a few loose strands of hair across her face. Finally she answered. "Everyone who stays, changes us. Everyone who leaves, changes us even more." Ethan didn't ask another question. Some answers deserved silence instead of curiosity. As summer slowly settled over the valley, they began exploring together. They walked through fields filled with wildflowers. They climbed quiet hills where the entire village looked no bigger than a painting. Sometimes they sat beneath the oldest oak tree for hours without speaking. It surprised Ethan how comfortable silence could become when shared with the right person. Back in the city, silence had always felt lonely. Here, beside Lina, silence felt like home. One afternoon a sudden rainstorm caught them far from the village. Laughing, they ran toward an abandoned wooden barn for shelter. Rain tapped gently against the roof while cool air filled the room. Lina stretched out her hands to catch tiny drops falling through small holes in the ceiling. When she laughed, Ethan noticed something. Her smile reached her eyes. But it disappeared very quickly. Almost as though happiness was something she never allowed herself to keep for long. He wanted to ask why. Instead, he simply watched the rain beside her. When the storm finally ended, a bright rainbow appeared across the valley. Lina looked at it quietly. "Beautiful things never stay for long," she whispered. Ethan turned toward her. "Maybe that's why they're beautiful." She looked at him with an expression he couldn't understand. It was gentle. It was grateful. And somewhere behind her smile, there was sadness she had never spoken about. As they walked back toward the village beneath the fading evening light, neither of them noticed the elderly woman watching from the porch of a nearby cottage. She smiled softly as they passed. Then she whispered to herself. Some hearts find each other long before they realize they are already falling in love. Neither Ethan nor Lina had spoken those words aloud. But somewhere deep inside, love had already begun growing in the quiet spaces between their conversations. And neither of them yet knew how deeply that love would one day be tested. The days after the rain passed slowly, as if the valley itself had decided to move in a calmer rhythm. Ethan began noticing small details he had never paid attention to before. The way morning mist stayed longer near the lake. The way birds gathered on the same old tree every sunrise. The way Lina always arrived at the pier slightly before sunset, as if she had been waiting there in her thoughts long before her feet reached the wood. Their conversations grew deeper without them trying. Sometimes they spoke about childhood memories. Sometimes about dreams they had long forgotten. Sometimes they simply sat in silence, listening to the soft sound of water touching the shore. But Ethan had started noticing something else too. Lina often stopped speaking in the middle of a sentence, as if certain words became too heavy to finish. One evening, as the sky turned soft orange and the wind carried the smell of approaching autumn, Ethan finally asked something he had been holding inside for days. "Lina, do you ever think about leaving this place?" Lina looked at the lake for a long time before answering. "I did once." "What stopped you?" Her fingers gently touched the edge of her notebook. "Some places don't let you leave easily." Ethan waited for more, but she did not continue. Instead, she changed the subject with a faint smile. "Tell me about your city." Ethan leaned back slightly, watching the slow movement of water. "It is loud. Always moving. Always rushing somewhere without knowing why. Do you miss it?" He thought carefully before answering. "Not when I'm here." A quiet pause followed. The sun dipped lower, painting the entire sky in fading gold. Lina opened her notebook but did not write anything. Instead, she tore out a blank page and folded it slowly. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then she placed the folded paper in his hand. "Keep it." "Why?" She looked at him, her voice softer than usual. "Some things are easier to say when written. But some things should never be written at all." Ethan tried to unfold it, but she gently stopped him. "Not yet." That single word stayed between them longer than the silence that followed. That night, Ethan could not sleep. The folded paper rested on the small table beside his bed, untouched. He kept wondering what Lina had wanted to write but chose not to. Meanwhile, in her small cabin, Lina stood near the window, staring at the dark lake. Her notebook lay open on the table. A half-written page remained visible. The ink had dried, but the words were still clear. "I wish I could stay here forever. But some goodbyes are already written before we realize we are living inside them." She closed the notebook slowly. Her eyes stayed on the window for a long time. Far away, thunder rolled softly across the mountains, even though the sky was clear. As if something unseen was preparing itself to change everything. The next morning, Ethan arrived earlier than usual. But Lina was not there. For the first time since they had met, the pier felt empty. Only the wind moved across the water, carrying a strange silence that did not feel peaceful anymore. Ethan waited. Minutes passed. Then hours. But Lina did not come. And somewhere deep inside him, without knowing why, he felt that something important had already begun to slip away from his life. The wind that morning felt different. Not stronger, just emptier. Ethan stood at the pier longer than he should have. The lake looked the same as always, calm, endless, patient, but for the first time it didn't feel like it was waiting for him anymore. It felt like it had already let something go. He looked at the spot where Lina usually stood. The exact place. As if repetition could somehow bring her back. But there was only wood, water, and silence. Finally, he sat down and placed the folded paper from last night in his hand. He had not opened it. Not yet. Something inside him kept resisting it, as if reading it would make Lina's absence real in a way he couldn't undo. Hours passed slowly. The sun climbed and then began to fall again, without Lina ever appearing. When evening came, Ethan finally stood up and unfolded the paper. His hands were steady, but only on the outside. Inside, something was breaking quietly. The paper had only a few lines. Not an answer. Not a confession. Just something fragile, like a breath held too long. "I don't know how to stay in places that already feel like memories. And I don't know how to ask someone to wait for me when I don't know if I will return the same." Ethan read it once. Then again. The words didn't change, but their meaning kept shifting inside him. As if the sentence was alive. as if it was continuing even after the ink ended. He sat down again. This time, the pier didn't feel empty. It felt far away. That night, Ethan walked through the small village near the lake. He asked people if they had seen her. An old shopkeeper remembered her. A woman at the bakery said she left early in the morning. A fisherman said he saw a figure walking toward the road that leads out of the valley. But no one knew where she went. Or why. Days passed. Then a week. The lake returned to its rhythm, but Ethan did not. He kept coming to the pier every morning. Same time. Same place. As if routine could hold something that was already gone. He never told anyone what Lina had meant to him. Because even he wasn't sure anymore what she was. A person. Or a moment that had learned how to breathe. One evening, as the sky turned pale and soft again, Ethan noticed something unusual on the edge of the pier. A second paper. Folded. Not his handwriting. His heart stopped before his hands even reached it. For a long time, he just looked at it. Then finally, he picked it up. And opened it. The paper trembled slightly in Ethan's hand, though there was no wind strong enough to move it. For a moment, he didn't read it. He just stared at the handwriting. It was Lina's. But it felt different. Heavier. Like the words had been written somewhere far away, not here by the lake. Finally, he unfolded it. If you are reading this, it means I didn't have the courage to say it in front of you. I wanted to stay until staying became impossible. Ethan's breath slowed. The lake behind him kept moving, but he didn't hear it anymore. Only the words. Only her voice inside the words. I didn't leave because I stopped caring. I left because I started caring too much. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. It didn't make sense at first. And then it did. Too clearly. Too painfully. The letter continued. This place, this lake, you. You became the kind of peace I was never supposed to find. Because people like me don't stay where they finally feel alive. We leave before it becomes something we can lose. Ethan slowly sat down on the wooden pier again. The same place. But it didn't feel like the same world anymore. That evening, he walked again through the village. But this time, something had changed inside him. He wasn't just searching for Lina. He was searching for a reason she might have disappeared without letting him hold on. At the small bakery, the woman looked at him longer this time. As if she had been waiting for this question. She didn't go far, the woman said softly. Ethan's heart lifted for a second. She went back to the city bus station. But, she looked like someone who wasn't returning. The words hit him strangely. Not like news. Like distance. Like something already decided. That night, Ethan stood at the edge of the lake again. The folded paper was still in his hand. But now there was something else inside it too. A question he couldn't answer. If she was still alive somewhere. Why did it feel like she had already become a memory? Far across the water, the wind moved slowly, brushing the surface into soft waves. And for the first time since Lina disappeared, Ethan spoke into the empty air. Was I too late, or was I never meant to reach you? The lake didn't answer. It never did. But that night, it felt like it understood. The next morning, Ethan didn't go to the pier. For the first time, he walked in the opposite direction. Away from the lake. Away from the place that had started to feel like it remembered Lina more than he did. The bus station was small, almost forgotten by time. A few buses came and went, carrying people who all looked like they were going somewhere important. Ethan stood near the platform, unsure if he was chasing a person. Or chasing the feeling of her. He asked the ticket counter. A young man checked a register, then shook his head. No direct name records. But a woman matching your description left for the city a week ago. That was all. No destination beyond that. Just the city. A place too large to hold one person. And too cold to hold a memory. Ethan bought a ticket. Not because he was sure. But because staying behind felt like accepting an ending he never agreed to. City. Noise returned immediately. Honking cars. Crowded streets. People moving like they had somewhere they couldn't afford to miss. Ethan stood in the middle of it all and felt something strange. Even surrounded by thousands. He had never felt more alone. Days passed in search. He checked small cafes, libraries, old parks. Places someone like Lina might choose to sit quietly. But every attempt ended the same way. A face that wasn't hers. A silence that didn't answer. One evening, as rain started falling over the city, Ethan sat under a small shelter near a metro station. His phone battery was low. His hope was lower. That's when he saw it. A bookstore across the street. Small. Warm light inside. Something about it felt familiar in a way he couldn't explain. He crossed the road. Inside, the smell of old paper and wood hit him immediately. And then, he stopped. At the far corner of the store. Someone was standing between shelves. Quiet. Still. Turning a page slowly, as if time itself was afraid to interrupt her. Lina. Ethan didn't move. Not at first. Because the moment felt fragile. Like if he stepped too fast, she would disappear again. She didn't notice him immediately. She was too focused on the book in her hand. But then, something made her pause. A feeling. A silence that didn't belong to the room. She turned. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. Not because there was nothing to say. But because everything came at once. Lina's eyes widened slightly. Not shock. Not fear. Something softer. Something tired. Something real. You came, she said finally. Ethan almost laughed. Not because it was funny. But because it felt like the simplest truth he had been chasing through an entire world. I didn't know where else to go, he said. A long silence followed. The bookstore kept breathing around them. Pages turning. Soft footsteps. A world continuing like nothing had changed. Lina closed her book slowly. I thought you would stay there, she said. At the lake? Yes. Ethan shook his head slightly. I tried. But some places don't let you keep only memories. They ask for answers. Her gaze dropped for a moment. Then she spoke quietly. I didn't disappear to hurt you. I know, Ethan said. And he meant it. Another pause. This one heavier. Lina stepped closer, just slightly. Not enough to close the distance completely. But enough to make it feel real again. I still don't know how to stay, she admitted. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then replied. Then don't stay forever. A beat. Just stay for today. For the first time in the entire story. Lina smiled. Small. Careful. But genuine. Outside, the rain continued falling over the city. Inside, between two people who had almost become memories of each other. Something quietly began again. Not an ending. Not a promise. Just a moment. Still alive. The rain didn't stop that night. It only softened, as if the city itself had decided to listen instead of speak. Ethan and Lina left the bookstore slowly. Neither of them said where they were going. They just walked, side by side, letting the streets decide their direction. For a while, there was no past between them. Only the sound of footsteps. Only the distance that had finally become small enough to breathe inside. They reached a small bridge over a narrow canal. The water below reflected broken pieces of light from the street lamps above. Everything looked slightly unreal, like a memory trying to form itself correctly. Lina leaned on the railing. Ethan stood beside her. Neither looked at each other at first, because both were afraid the moment would change if they did. After a long silence, Lina spoke. "I used to think people leave because they stop loving." Her voice was calm, but tired in a way that carried many nights. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He just listened. "But I've learned something else," she continued. "Sometimes people leave because they don't know how to be loved without losing themselves." The word stayed in the air between them. Heavy. Honest. Not dramatic. Just true. Ethan finally turned toward her. "I didn't come here to fix you," he said quietly. "I came because losing you felt like losing something I never got to understand properly." Lina looked at him then. Really looked. Not like someone checking if they are safe, but like someone trying to remember if staying is possible. A long silence followed. The kind that doesn't feel empty anymore. Just full of everything unsaid. Finally, Lina spoke again. "I don't know what I will be tomorrow." Ethan nodded slightly. "That's okay." A pause. "I don't need tomorrow." She frowned gently, as if she didn't trust simple answers anymore. Ethan added, softer this time. "I just need this moment where you are here." For a while, neither of them spoke. The rain continued falling into the canal below. The city kept moving around them. But the bridge felt still. Like it had paused just for them. Then Lina did something small. She didn't step closer. She didn't make a promise. She simply stayed where she was. Not leaving.